What have user stories, the Scrum board and the story points in common? They are all not part of Scrum. If that surprises you, you should watch this video. When teaching a Scrum course, many of my participants are usually really surprised when telling them that certain elements that are usually considered to be part of Scrum actually are not. Now, of course, you can ask, what is the official Scrum after all? I guess most people would agree that the real Scrum is what has been described as such in the Scrum Guide published by Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland. Here are some examples of things that you will not find in the Scrum Guide. User stories that describe a certain scenario in which the user will benefit from the product, or the Scrum board with its 3 columns of do, doing, done. Also not included are certain procedures within the Scrum ceremonies, for example, how to organize a sprint planning. Even agile estimating with story points or t-shirt sizes is not included in the Scrum Guide. But in a certain way, all these things belong to Scrum, don't they? Yes, they do, but nevertheless, they are not part of the Scrum Guide. The Scrum Guide, you find a link below, is a short resume of the most important principles and elements of Scrum. Anything else is a pattern. There are quite a lot of patterns, and they are by far more extensive than the Scrum Guide itself. Both together form what you consider to be Scrum and what you use in your projects. However, there's a big difference between the Scrum Guide and patterns. If you want to apply real Scrum, you need to apply the Scrum Guide, whereas the patterns are optional. Patterns are good practices of a certain discipline. The term was created by the Austrian-American architect Christoph Alexander. In his book, he describes certain design patterns that contribute to the fact that you feel good in a certain building or city layout without being able to say why. Later on, the term was adopted for software development and for Scrum. If you have several interrelated patterns, you can also call this a pattern language. Scrum patterns are solutions for a problem in Scrum. In psychology, they use the term behavioral pattern. In this sense, patterns are successful behaviors within a Scrum project environment. You could also say that Scrum is nothing more than a collection of interrelated patterns. However, some people use the term pattern only for those practices that are not included in the Scrum Guide. If you want to follow that definition, patterns are simply add-ons to Scrum. Scrum patterns basically have 2 objectives. On the one hand, they should make it more pleasant to work in a Scrum project, for example, preventing conflict or improving communication. On the other hand, they should boost productivity. Jeff Sutherland calls this hyper-productivity. If you have an idea how to improve Scrum, you can test it on many teams in several companies to prove your hypothesis. However, this usually will not be possible. As a rule of thumb, you can do the following. Apply your invention 3 times, and if it's successful, you could publish the pattern on a blog and see if others consider it also to be useful. There is even an annual conference on this topic called PLOP, which means Pattern Language of Programs. At this conference, new patterns are introduced and refined in workshops. There are patterns and anti-patterns. Anti-patterns are behaviors you should avoid. An anti-pattern could be, for example, having a daily Scrum with more than 15 minutes in which people from outside the team participate actively and having a technical discussion between 2 team members with the rest of the team standing around bored to tears. You can divide the patterns into 5 groups. First group, meta patterns. These are about core values of Scrum. An example for a meta pattern is the self-organizing nature of a team. An anti-pattern would be having a project manager that actually tells the team how to organize. 2. Scrum framework patterns. These are approaches that are already included in the Scrum guide. An example would be the retrospective or the sprint planning. 3. Social patterns. These are patterns that improve coordination and communication or the team spirit. An example would be inventing a way how to give each other feedback without hurting someone. 4. Tool patterns. These patterns refer to certain tools or techniques, such as the use of software or the Scrum board. 5. Scaling patterns. These patterns come into play if you're working with several Scrum teams on a project. I will put online step-by-step more videos on specific patterns, so stay tuned. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like or subscribe. And of course, also your comments are very welcome. Thanks for watching.